Now, after interviews with dozens of agents for the first time, he's published his new book. It's called The Nazis Next Door: How America Became a Safe Haven for Hitler's Men. You can read the prologue on our website. Eric Lichtblau was last on Democracy Now! In 2008 after he and fellow reporter James Risen won the Pulitzer Prize for exposing the NSA's warrantless wiretapping, despite White House pressure to kill the story. He joins us from the New York Times D.C. bureau. Welcome back, Eric, to Democracy Now! It is a fascinating book. You open the book by telling us the story of a man in New Jersey. Why don't you tell us about him?
Sure. His name is Tom Subsikoff. He was a guy who had many bosses over the years. He worked for the FBI, he worked for the CIA, and before that he worked for the Nazi SS. And that opening scene that you're talking about takes place in the mid-1970s when people at the Justice Department were starting to first become aware that there were ex-Nazis in the United States, and Subsikoff was one of the people who had come under investigation. He had been living in the United States for 20 years at that point. And he went back to his old handlers at the CIA somewhat frantically because the heat was really being put on him over his past and these accusations that he was, in fact, a Nazi, which he vehemently denied. And in the declassified documents that I looked at from the CIA, there's memo after memo where the CIA is recounting these frantic phone calls and conversations with Subsikoff, where he's saying, you know, what am I going to do? And the CIA is almost as frantically then meeting amongst themselves to say, we've got a little problem on our hands here and it's going to get worse.
And Eric, talk about the CIA head, Allen Dulles, brother of John Foster Dulles, the Secretary of State under Eisenhower, and his role in shaping this policy.
Right. Yeah, Dulles was one of the intelligence titans of the 1950s, one of the original Cold Warriors. And he was someone who believed that there were, quote-unquote, moderate Nazis, his words, who the U.S. could use to its advantage in the Cold War. And he actively recruited them himself and in a number of cases intervened on their behalf when they were facing accusations about their past, about their involvement in Nazi war crimes. And he and J. Edgar Hoover were really the two linchpins in this, in developing this strategy of recruiting ex-Nazis as Cold Warriors, as Soviet, anti-Soviet assets who they believe could gather intelligence for the U.S. Now, the irony is that a lot of these guys, a lot of these ex-Nazis used as spies by the CIA, by the FBI, really turned out to be bad spies. There are all sorts of files that I examined showing that they, not shockingly in hindsight, that the Nazis were found to be liars and cheats and embezzlers, and in a couple of cases they're even found to be Soviet double agents. So not only do they have the incredible baggage of being Nazis, but they were not even good spies.
I mean, the story you tell of Allen Dulles meeting with Nazi General Karl Wolff in Switzerland. He was the #2 man, right, for Himmler. Explain the deal that they were making, and then talk about the scientists that were recruited. I just flew back from Austria and sat next to a man who lives in Vienna, who grew up in northern New Jersey, and he said his father was brought from Germany by the CIA to northern New Jersey because he was a scientist, and they wanted him here, not in Russia.
Right. Well, starting with the scientists, we brought over under something called Program Paperclip about 1,600 Nazi scientists. These were engineers, doctors, jet propulsion experts, things like that. The most famous among them was Wernher von Braun, who was one of the guiding hands in getting us to the moon in 1969. And officially, under the policies put in place by Truman and Eisenhower after the war, these were not supposed to be, quote-unquote, ardent Nazis, whatever that may mean. But, you know, in fact, these were people who were directly involved in, for instance, running slave labor factories where thousands and thousands of people died in making Hitler's rockets. These were doctors who were involved in medical atrocities. They then found homes in the United States as American scientists. Many of them became U.S. citizens. Many of them became honored for their work in the United States. As far as Allen Dulles, who you asked about, yeah, his role in having negotiations and conversations with Nazis began even before the war was over, believe it or not. A few months before the war, there was a meeting that I talk about in the book where he met at a safe house in Zurich with Himmler's ex-chief of staff, who was trying to save his own skin. He realized the war was about to be over in a few months, and he was understandably afraid of being charged in all sorts of war crimes. This was Himmler's chief of staff. He was involved in setting up the train network that led millions of Jews and others to their deaths. And Dulles thought that this General Karl Wolff, could help end the war earlier. As it turned out, they ended the war maybe 2 weeks earlier in the region in Italy that Wolff controlled. But as part of these negotiations, they were sipping scotch over a lovely fireside in Zurich. For months and months after the war, even for the first couple of years, Dulles really effectively protected General Wolff, Himmler's ex-chief of staff, from war crimes charges. Wolff went from being a chief defendant, one of the top Nazi defendants at Nuremberg, to being merely a witness, and served virtually no time in prison. In fact, even when he was nominally a prisoner as a POW, he was allowed to wear a gun. He went boating on the weekends in Austria. He led sort of a charmed life after the war, thanks to the help of Allen Dulles, who went on to become the first director of the CIA.